Yo, welcome to another iAnimate podcast. I'm your host, Larry Vasquez, and joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Rick Arroyo. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Peace out. What's up, everybody?
Yeah, all right. Coming down to the end of the new year here. We're getting out a couple more podcasts before then, huh?
Yeah. I mean, this has been a blast. This has been great. I mean, this is a lot of podcasts, to be honest with you, but it's been awesome, and I love doing these.
They have been fun, man. They have been fun. We've already got a good lineup squared away for the start of next year, and looking for some new interviewees, so it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, let me just say, really, also, we have a lot of friends out there in the industry. If there's anyone from a certain studio, doesn't matter what studio, if you wanted, like, hey, share a great story or share something interesting, feel free to reach out. If we can make it happen, you know, I personally, I would love to. So just email us at it's news@ianimate.net.
Yeah, either that or you can go to the website and do the contact form on there. That's actually, Rick, that's a great point. Like we've mentioned before, we've got a lot of talent at our disposal here at iAnimate, and so we've had a really an opportunity to get a lot of these people in or even lined up. But like we started out with these podcasts, we love animation, and so we want to talk about animation and talk about games. And so, yeah, anybody out there that doesn't have to be necessarily part of iAnimate, we'd like to talk with you and get you on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So good point. Well, it should be another fun and entertaining. I like the two combination, the entertainment part of our podcast and I don't know if I want to call it educational, but informative, part of our podcast. And so I think we have another good one here because we've been able to get a guy by the name of Darryl Purdy, quite a neat background in his games career here. And so we're going to pull him on here as well. You ready?
Yeah. So let's do this.
All right, let's get our guest on here.
Hello.
Darryl, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing very well. It's very nice to meet you.
You too.
All right. Well, we are recording just to let you know. Sometimes we've caught some of our guests off guard.
No problem.
Well, we do really appreciate your time and joining us here. I know it's a little bit later there. You're up in Quebec. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. Yeah, snowy Quebec. We've gotten snow in the last couple of days. So.
All right. Do you enjoy that?
I do if I can get out on the hills.
All right.
If I can't, I kind of hate it.
Snowboard or skis?
I snowboard.
Okay. Right on. Very cool.
Nice.
And then familiar with my partner in crime, Rick Arroyo here?
I am. Yes, we just had a bit of a conversation before this.
Yeah, we're good. Make sure he's ready for this. He's ready to go. It's gonna be awesome.
Well, like I said, I really do appreciate your time in this. These have been a lot of fun and I think informative. So we're looking for another exciting show.
Great. I look forward to it.
Well, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Where to begin?
Looking at your bio, looks like you got about 13 plus years under your belt here, huh?
Yeah, I have, I guess, about 13 plus. I kind of started, I went to school at this kind of little school on the East Coast of Canada, and I took 3D animation. It was basically because when I was younger, I walked out of Jurassic Park, and I was kind of like, oh my God, they actually created dinosaurs, amber and mosquitoes. Who would have thought of that? So I kind of thought, how do I do that? It went a few years, and then a friend of mine had started had taken a course at this little known animation school. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. And from there, I got my first start in television, doing kind of like theater promos and then on to like Saturday morning cartoon stuff.
Oh, right on.
Which was a lot of fun, and then kind of ended my television career doing a sci-fi show called Lex: The Dark Zone, which was somewhat of an acquired taste, but it was a great crew to work with. And from there, I made the jump into games. At that time, Ubisoft was kind of making a name for itself in Montreal. For some reason, my family has kind of a history with Montreal. Like 4 out of the 5 kids have lived in Montreal at some point. So it's like a rite of passage. I moved there, and I guess I walked the streets to try to find a gig. And I kind of got I cut my teeth, I guess, at it was A2M, but now it's Behavior Interactive.
Okay.
I spent the better part of 4 years, almost 5 years there. And then I kind of did a small stint in the film industry. But at that time, the film industry was going through a bit of a rocky stage in Montreal. I kind of went back into games and headed across the ocean to Pandemic Australia.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that was kind of a lifestyle choice and a career choice. I mean, I had a couple of friends that were working at Pandemic, and they said, "Oh, this is a great crew over here, and there's a lot of sun, beach, surfing, so
Can't
you
go
should come
wrong.
over." Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking like, geez, how am I going to get any work done?
Yeah.
So yeah, so then I went to Pandemic. Sadly, EA ended up closing that studio shortly after that. But I was lucky to get on at THQ, and I was able to stay in Australia for a little bit longer. But then, various things, family ties, and kind of, I started talking with Ubisoft, and that's when I came back for Far Cry 3. And I mean, we just shipped that not too long ago, and now I've moved on to Warner Brothers. Yeah.
Okay. No, what are you doing at Warner Brothers?
I'm an animation director
Okay.
at Warner Brothers. Yeah. But I probably have a similar role to what I had at Ubisoft in that I'll be doing animation direction, and I'll also be doing some focus on cinematics as well, cinematic direction.
Can you describe to us what an animation director would do?
Yeah, I mean, from studio to studio, it sometimes varies a little bit, but generally, like say on Far Cry 3, as an animation director, I'm responsible for pretty much all animation in the game. So, and a lot of that is setting the style of animation or the direction in which we'll go, and making sure that I guess within gameplay and NPC or non-player animation and cinematics, there's a cohesive kind of vision across the board. Um, so really, it's kind of like the holistic gatekeeper for the animation inside the game.
Now, do you get to animate much when you're doing that, or is you're just basically directing and overseeing?
I don't get to animate as much as I'd like to.
Okay, but you do get some. Okay.
I do. I would say once you're in production, no, I don't animate really at all. I would say the stage that I'm in currently at Warner Brothers right now is when I would get to animate the most, and that's really in the exploration phase. Now it's funny because I was talking with guys at work the other day, and it's been a while since I've been in this part of production. Like we're in concept phase, right? So for the last probably 6 years, I've kind of jumped into pre-prod or production, so you kind of like have to hit the ground running. It's kind of like, okay, go 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 go. But now I'm lucky with the project we're on at Warner's, is that I get to do a bit of concept phase. So what's nice is now's the time when I get to explore some animation myself,
Okay.
to kind of play around, see what works for the characters, maybe do, character tests on a few of our main characters. And this way I can kind of myself find what's going to work and what's not going to work. And hopefully by the time we staff up with animators, I'll have like the Bible ready and say, okay, look, this is what works. This is what I like. Let's try to stay away from this.
Yeah, we had a chance to get my brother, actually, Darryl Vasquez, who was one of our first graduate alumni. He works over at Insomniac with one of his coworkers, who's actually an iAnimate student. And we're just kind of talking about some of that kind of stuff, though, where he was first introduced to some of these characters like Ratchet and Clank, and not knowing who they were, and having to jump into there kind of blindly going, okay, well, yeah, I know how to animate, but it's like they're go, okay, yeah, but he wouldn't do this or he wouldn't animate like that. But you're getting to be on the other end where you're developing some of that and in a sense creating this character, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is kind of how I like to approach it is, I guess, like depending on which way our game goes, we may have kind of multiple playable characters. So myself, of course, I want each of these characters to feel somewhat unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's kind of like similar to, I guess, back in the Disney days when they would design the character, they would figure out a shorthand for what makes that character. So multiple artists could draw it. I guess I can equate it to kind of that. It's like an animation shorthand in a way to say like, okay, for character X, he moves like this. He's never gonna turn too fast. He's always gonna, so you just kind of like go through the paces and find out what works for each character,
Mm.
which is really exciting right now because, like I said, it's been a while since I've had the kind of time, and I guess we don't have as much time as say a film to explore characters, but this is kind of a nice thing to start off a project where you can get in there right when characters being concepted by the art team and kind of be able to say when they're designing a character, I get to have the luxury of saying like, okay, well, this thing you put on his shoulder, this is probably going to cause issues in this range of motion. So it's really the infancy stages of character development, I guess, for the project.
That's neat. One of the things that I think most of us probably enjoy about animation isn't just the technical aspects of it. Is it moving correctly? It's that idea that this feels like a person. I think in one of the podcasts we were talking about a story that one of our instructors, Jamal Bradley, had relayed to us from Glenn Keane. And I forget who it was, Ollie Johnson or something like that. And he was, kind of excited to show him his animation. And he's like, yeah, that's nice. It looks good. He's all, but it doesn't really entertain me. And it was that idea was that the animation was working correctly, but it wasn't entertaining because it didn't feel like a person here. And that's where I love that where you're hitting there. It's not just let's mechanically do these things right. It's let's get this character out of this, this model that we have here at a T-pose,
Oh, exactly. And I mean, I think I find it when I was a younger animator. I mean, I still do. Like, I love looking at concept art. I love looking at any type of thing that goes into character development. I love looking at it because it kind of invigorates me as an animator just to kind of jump in and get into the lore of a character.
Mm-hmm.
And I find, especially with game animation, you're going to spend a lot of your time doing the technical side, especially with a playable character where a lot of it is defined by the control that the user has. So it's nice to have, I find, at the beginning of a project, a couple of exploratory animations that an animator can go back to and look to see the kind of core of the character. Because they are going to be responsible for doing like very mechanical animations later on to make sure it works with the gameplay. And so it's always nice to reflect back on, okay, if I have to do whatever, a turn 180, it's like, okay, at least I can go back and look at the character and say, okay, maybe I can add like, a few little things that will make it fit inside this character rather than just make turn around and go the other way.
Someone's not just starting out and just doing the same 180. They're making it for this character.
Exactly.
I was going to say, just a really quick comment. When people create game animations, they think it very mechanical and very linear. But nowadays, games, it's finding the personality in that short amount of frames. And I think that's the essence. If you can get that character in 8 frames or 15 frames, or if you're lucky, 30 frames, that's going to make a character stand out and be more entertaining. And like Darryl was saying, that's working within the technical side of it. How, you do have to do these technical animations, 180 turns, but how can you make it really entertaining? Mm-hmm. And do you find that animators have a hard time doing this, Darryl? Like when you assign them?
It depends. I mean, like, even speaking from my history, like coming from television, which again, it's nowhere near film, right? You still have quite tight deadlines in television animation as well. But it is still a bit, I think, geared more towards the art side of it. I did, when I first got into games, I struggled a little bit because, I was thinking, as a lot of animators do, you're always thinking about, okay, what's he thinking? What's, or he or she thinking? What's the thought process? And, you're really trying to kind of, Larry, like you said before, you're trying to kind of like think of it as a living, breathing person,
right,
which is good, but you tend to then maybe over animate for games where, something that you could do in 12 frames, you take 26, you know what I mean? And so then the controls potentially becomes sluggish, right? But yeah, I think animators do struggle with it a bit, but I think it's more that it might be the approach in which they think about it. And the way I see it is games, the big difference for me in games than in film or television is that you're going to do a whole bunch of potentially little animations that are going to be cut up into various pieces. But what you have to try to think about is how do those, whatever, 25 animations all fit into one cohesive character or one cohesive movement set. So if you can't get the personality into each individual animation, what you should be trying to do is thinking how it's going to link together and make sure that the essence of the character gets into the global move set or system.
Mhm.
I find myself now thinking more at a system level than a per animation level.
Mm.
And I mean, it's great now. We're at the end of this console cycle and going into a new one. Animation has, I think, come leaps and bounds since I started. Definitely. I mean, now we're able to do a lot more stuff, and I think it's only going to get better. I don't know if that actually answered your question, but
But it's
That
it's
was-
it's still the idea of keeping the big picture and not getting lost in the little, like you said, that short clip of an animation. It's keeping the big picture. This is a person. This is how they're supposed to act. And now when you execute that short clip of an animation, you're keeping that in mind.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think going to Rick's uh, comment is that you'd be amazed at how much personality you can get into, you know, 7 frames of animation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was an example I remember seeing of I think it was James Baxter when he started out with Richard Williams or whatever. I think he was drawing on Who Framed Roger Rabbit or whatever, and he was, I think, all of 19 or something at the time, and he had one of the shots where hopefully I'm remembering this correctly, but where one of the rats pushes the gas pedal or something. Or, can you hear me?
Yeah, cutting in and out just a bit.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting too animated.
No, there you go. Okay.
Probably
that was good. That was good.
pulling my mic out here.
Yeah, we were able to hear
Um,
you, but so you can keep going.
no, so he was animating one of the rats or something and Roger pressing the gas pedal, and it was a really short frame, and it was just a shot of the gas pedal, and his foot comes in and presses it, and everybody was amazed at how amazing that shot was. But I mean, it was all of, I don't know, maybe like 16, 20 frames or something. It's like a second, but he kind of put everything into it. So, like I say, it's amazing what you can do with a little amount of frames, if you kind of put your mind to it.
One of the things I'm kind of seeing as consistent across a lot of the boards with those who have been in games or television, like you're saying here, is that you guys become very proficient in what you do. And I was recently talking with one of our feature animation instructors, and he was talking about that one of the best animators in DreamWorks, he had about 10 years experience in the games. And so there seems to be even just that, to be really concise in what you're going to do, and you have to be really conscious of that, and it kind of does help you strip away a lot of the fat from something you might normally do otherwise.
I think because, well, there's two things. I mean, obviously the time limit that you have for animations in games. I guess you can't help but become efficient, or as an animator, because y the turnaround time for a lot of game development is really quick.
Mhm.
Um, you know, you your your best friend is rapid prototyping. So first you're going to bang out like placeholder animations really quickly and get it in. Then you're going to probably test the system, and then when it comes down to actually creating the final polished animation, you still have a very quick time frame to do it. So you end up, I guess, just training yourself to really kind of focus on what matters most.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, to be really conscious and focus about, like you said, what matters most. And then when you got, more time, you're able to layer on really nicely versus just throwing a bunch of stuff at it.
Yeah, and I would say, like, I guess animating in games, that's exactly it. I find a lot of people who are good at animating games tend to be very good at structuring their animations. So it's almost as if they're trying to set themselves up, in case they get that more polished time. You know what I mean? So they're going to have a process where they rough something in, and then they get another pass at it, and they think, okay, I need to think exactly what I want to put in this because this might be my last crack at it. So they do it, but they set themselves up for, if by chance later on it comes and says, oh, we have some more polish time, well, they can always jump back into that animation and be like, okay, now there was this and this I wanted to put in, and now I'm gonna layer that on top.
Right.
So they end up being very structured that way, where they can always kind of iterate if they get the chance, which I think makes them very kind of practical as animators. And they kind of train their creativity to work that way. It doesn't make them any less creative. It kind of makes them just more, I guess, I would say, more, their creativity is a bit more structured. Right?
Now, let me ask you this. Why is it that you don't get as much time in the games for that polish? I know a lot of these games could end up, making a lot of money. Why is it that they don't have that time sometimes to do the full polish that maybe they would like to?
I think it's, I don't know. I mean, I have a theory on it, I guess, but my theory is that games is such an iterative process that you never really know how something is going to turn out exactly. Like you can have a theory or you can have a plan for what you want to do. Let's say with a movement system, right? And you approach it, you start it, but once you start playing it, you're going to find out that what you thought might work here didn't work. So then you go back and you kind of adjust, and then you play it again, and then you think, okay, well, that was cool, but maybe I need to add a transition to this state, and this state. So then you add the transitions, and so really what you're doing is, in a way, you're kind of it's almost like it's weird. Your animation is somewhat structured, but the way you're developing the movement system or any system is a bit of a straight ahead approach, kind of like getting it, the animation, putting it in, testing it, readjusting to what you found in the control. So I think because that happens a lot in games, and in the end, your game and your animation is only as good as how it feels in someone's hands.
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly in development.
Okay.
It's not like, okay, we've got our camera locked, this is the layout, he says this line, and now, okay, do the performance, right? It's really kind of like, okay, my animation's in, play test. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then the designer's like, oh, well, I think, it feels unresponsive, so we need to cut off a few frames here. Okay, and then you do it or whatever. And then maybe it's like, oh, maybe it was too much. But it's always iterative process, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's constantly evolving. And then potentially you might have a happy accident where something happens and it's like, oh, well, we could take that here.
You
And so
run
then
with it.
that feature might explode into, a grand feature. And then it's like, okay, so how do we fit all of that stuff into this one thing?
So basically, because of the human interaction, it becomes more of a dynamic process rather than and I don't want to use the term static, but compared to maybe film that you've got a beginning, middle, and end, and you've fleshed out the story with storyboards or something like that. Whereas with games, you have that human interaction that can throw in a bunch of different elements.
Yeah, I think it's because it's, like I say, it's constantly evolving. As most of the seasoned game animators could tell you, I don't know, myself, I've probably worked on, I don't know how many movement systems, and not one plays probably the exact same as the other. There's always something that's maybe a bit different. And then throw into the idea of like, you're not just, your animation is not being displayed just on a 2D screen in a way. It's in a 3D real-time environment. So this is also a thing that kind of, for lack of a better term, throws a spanner into the works for just animation workflow. You're going to be moving through a 3D world in real time, and when the player wants to go left, he's got to go left. So it's not kind of like, it's way less controlled than, say, a film or television.
Yeah, I was going to say, for those who don't know, a lot of these systems are being built at the same time. Your navigation, your combat, or your interactions, or your special feature, and that the other system might affect your systems. It might, like, they're like, hey, our system your system's too fast for what we're trying to do. Can we, slow yours down? Or maybe is like like your system is too slow, it has to be faster, and it will affect your animations. And with like how Darryl started, people don't know this, and that's why you want to hit the ground, running, because you're constantly, even you think it's finished, it's never finished because there's always something new. And how I like to see it is like a Rubik's cube. You're always playing with it until the product is final. So there's always this kind of like, I'm going to turn it here, I'm going to fix this here, but now I have to come back. I have to move the system to the side for a little bit and work on something else. So you're constantly figuring things out, and that's why it's so iterative.
When you say movement system, is that the same thing as the game engine, or what is a movement system?
Movement system is like at its most basic is like idle to walk, run, and then maybe stop, and you might want to turn or whatever. But I mean, then it can explode out. I mean, depending, a movement system could expand into bunches of transitions like turn 90 jumps and double jumps and then cover systems and climbs and strafing and, depending. I mean, so your basic movement system is but stand, walk, and run. Yeah. And then it can go anywhere from there.
I mean, I'm sure he worked. They're also working crazy. Like your walk, your idle can go to like a jump, and then your jump could go into dive into water, jump off the air, land. You could get hit in midair, and that's all intertwined. So it could get extremely complex. It's just like this web of movements that creates one character's complete locomotion. So it's pretty impressive.
Kind of an if this happens, then this has to happen. If that happens, then that.
I mean, even just in a walk, like, the player will stop at any point. So he might stop midway through a walk, but you have 2 steps, let's say, in a walk cycle, and then left foot, right foot. So he could bail at any time, or he could turn at any time, or so it really is a good example. It's like a spider web. Like it's never just, there's at any given time there can be like 10 animations playing. It gets fairly complicated.
What is it that you most enjoy about working in games?
I guess probably what I like the most is, I like and probably dread the most is the kind of dynamic and chaotic nature of making a game. It is complete collaboration. Like just animation alone, it kind of sits in the middle of programming, design, art. It's kind of like you always have to be talking to somebody, and you always have to be kind of like working with someone else to figure out how to do something. Like problem solving is also a big thing I love about games. Like you're constantly, you constantly have things to figure out, which I quite like. I mean, if I'm doing the same thing over and over again, I get bored very quickly. Probably have a form of ADHD or something. I don't know, but so I kind of like the ever changing nature of games and development. At the same time, it is very frustrating.
It always seems that double-edged sword, though, in anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I'm sorry, guys. Really quickly with Darryl's, what I think was really cool with Darryl's point is that when you work in games or like inside the game and not cinematics, because you could do both, or if you're lucky, you could work on both teams if you know how to. When you're in games, you also kind of need to learn about the other departments, how they think and how they work, so both of you can adjust to create what you need to create. So you understand how to think like a coder. You understand a little bit about level design and streaming, and you also learn about scripting and how things are triggered and how things are going to be blending. And you learn how, like, is it an in-game camera that's working, or is it a camera that's going to blend to animated camera? So working like in the middle of in games, you get to learn a little bit of everyone's profession. So I think that's kind of, and I think you need to, if you want to excel and become like this, a great animator, you need to have that mind thought to be able to learn and adapt what you're creating to the needs of each department. So
I agree 100%. I mean, probably one of the biggest mistakes a young animator can make is that he or she looks at their animation in Maya or whatever you're using, Motion Builder, Max, whatever, and they animate it and they say, "Oh, okay, I'm done." right? And then they send it off into the void. And then, I've had this happen, and then they come up to you like, whatever, a couple days later, that, or a week or something, that they see it in the build, and they're like, oh, it looks nothing like what I did in in Maya. And you're like, no, because Maya's just the beginning point. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to export that, you got to get it into the system, and then, as a game animator, you got to play. Like, you got to play your stuff, because to me, I really put a lot of ownership on my animators to say, look, guys, you should have a build running all the time. You should be knocking on the programmer or the designer's door all the time to see your stuff if you're not implementing it yourself. And because the end result, just like in film, the end result is up on the screen. In games, the end result is on the gamepad in your hand, and you should be playing it and seeing what's wrong. And if there's a glitch, you figure out how to, or you find somebody to help you fix it, or you figure out how to fix it. So Maya or your 3D package is kind of like the starting point. And, there's tons, I've seen tons of animations look great in Maya or whatever, and get into a game engine and are not implemented properly or haven't been thought out correctly, and they just look bad. And they could be the best animation ever in Maya, but if it's not implemented properly, or it doesn't fit into a system in the right way, then it's almost worthless.
I had a really quick question. You talked about ownership. Do you I mean, each studio is a little bit different, but do you have your animators design the system as well as implement the system, or is it depending on the project you're on?
It depends. I think it depends on kind of multiple things. I guess I'm going to give a bit of history here. I guess back when I started, our company was very programmer driven. Not even design driven, it was programmer driven. And as an animator, it was a little bit frustrating then, because you were kind of told that, okay, the system is going to go in this way, and you're going to give me an idle, you're going to give me a walk, and it can only be this long. And, so you just kind of like, you were a factory, a movement factory. Since then, it's gotten a lot better. I tend to like with tools like I guess Morpheme, and a lot of game engines now are going to kind of node-based editors, like kind of state machines, where they give the animator a lot more freedom and a lot more control to create a system, with basically programming support. I tend to like this because I think it builds better animators, because it goes to Rick's point where the animator becomes, in essence, a couple of us were talking about it at Ubisoft a while ago, and we called it Designator, right? Because if your animation does not, like I said before, if your animation does not work within the system, or it's of no use. So I like animators to start thinking about the system, and what animations they have to break up, and where do they fit into the system to create a good whatever, if it's fight system, or if it's movement, or if it's whatever climbing system. Then they're thinking about designing the whole system, and not just producing those 10 animations or those 20 animations. So I really like to try to get my animators working in the design of the system as well. And I think it yields really good results. But I mean, it depends on the company. I mean, I've worked with designers who are either very hands-on or kind of a bit more high level. Some designers really like to kind of get in and kind of say, I need, these 10 moves, and they're going to go together like this. And then I have designers who sometimes just say, look, I need a flight system, and he needs to be able to move left and move right. It's up to you how to do it. I tend to like that myself, because I find the fun thing as an animator in games is to be able to create systems. And I think an animator is going to know kind of how to make stuff move the best it can. Now, I mean, you need input from everybody else to make sure that you're not, like I say, not over animating something and taking too much time. Like, control is always a big thing. But I think the more we can let animators kind of be authors of systems, the better animators you're going to get in the long run. They're going to start thinking about design and start thinking about implementation and all that stuff, and less about just the art form itself.
Yeah, I like to tell Larry, I probably you heard me say this. When they come, the students come to our program, I tell them, you're not just an animator, you're a game developer. You need to know how to develop games or how to design these systems, how a flow chart works or how a logic chart works, or, understand the inputs. And it's not just, hey, I'm coming to do games, I'm going to learn how to do animate. It's, like you said, the animation in my eyes, that's not the end result. It's the end result is the player's input. And I just want to iterate, like, yeah, you are more than just an animator, but you're also a developer when you work in games, of course. So
one of the things I'm liking that I'm hearing from you is just like you're talking about what you're expecting out of your animators. And I apologize because we forgot to mention at the beginning of the podcast that Darryl will be joining our Animate Games team next year and will be one of our games instructor. I'm really looking forward to that. What are you looking forward to maybe most about taking what you do in the industry now and adapting that to your teaching with your students here?
Yeah, I guess Rick and I were talking a little bit about this before I was going down memory lane, and I was saying that I watched the latest games reel, iAnimate reel, and I was blown away by the caliber of what's there, right? Because I was saying, like, when I came out of my course, it was a 3D animation course, but it basically taught you how to use a 3D software. Didn't teach you really to animate or anything. So all the character animation and stuff you kind of did on your own time. What I like is that, like, the iAnimate program for games is that, these students are getting a huge leg up. Like, they're kind of like starting out with a very kind of specific skill set that's going to get them, going to get them a great start in games. I'm kind of looking forward to that. I mean, I think programs like this are amazing because I would have loved to have something like this when I was starting out in animation. It's more kind of that. If anything, to be honest, I'm somewhat nervous about starting because I was saying to Rick, like, I'm the quintessential, I don't know, not tortured artist, but insecure artist, right? I always think my stuff is never good enough, and I said to him, like, one day people are going to find out that I'm just faking. You know what I mean? So beware, students.
Yeah, there's a lot of instructors that I've heard say that, so I think that's actually probably real common. And that's one of the things that's cool too, is that we were talking about in the previous podcast, is there was a interview with Richard Lico, one of our game instructors, and he was just talking about how the days of internship are kind of, he wasn't saying that they were numbered or anything along that lines, but just it's not always easy because now you've got to consider how much time and resources you have as a company to invest into somebody. And that's where he was saying a company or a program like iAnimate is a perfect opportunity for that, because that's exactly what you're doing. As a student of animation, it's just neat for me to hear you talk about, my animators as a director, but now be able to apply that same kind of feel to your students, treating them as, like you said, like you're their director and you're going to teach that way.
Actually, you know what? That's a great way of putting it. The way I would see it is that I would feel like I would treat them like they were on the production floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would give them the best education, because I remember coming out of school and, I mean, it's funny because, like, let's say you do a 2-year program, or the program that I did. Well, a year of on-the-job training felt like, to me, it equated to 10 years of the schooling that I got. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the kind of like structure of iAnimate is great because it kind of really is like an internship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, this is how you are going to get I guess directed on the production floor in a game studio, which is crucial because it already establishes kind of workflows and kind of ways of thinking. And you're also going to see kind of like, this is kind of the day-to-day thing that happens in a game development studio.
Then when they actually go into a studio, even though I'm sure there's probably like you're saying there's insecurities, but all of a sudden they kind of start feeling like, hey, wait a minute, these are familiar terms, these are familiar workflows, these are familiar flow charts, or whatever it might be. Some of that stuff starts building up that confidence because they felt like a lot of this stuff is not new to them. They're familiar with it.
No, exactly. Yeah, like I say, it's a huge leg up, because I don't think there would be any other way to teach a program like this other than making it kind of try to reflect what it is like in a studio to produce kind of the work for games. I mean, you could teach them animation skills, but if you don't teach them how to construct them and how to build them in the proper way, then they're going to go into a game studio and they're going to have the shock that a lot of us other animators had when we first went into games that had come from kind of a different field was like, wait, what do you mean it's not only about animation? Oh, okay, well, all right then.
Yeah.
So then you had to acclimatize, right?
Yeah, and that's what's actually been really nice, having the two divisions that we have. The feature division that is just really just concentrating on the principles of animation and teaching that. And in the same boat, we have all of our instructors are working in the industry, so it's very much that studio feel as well. And even talking about at the beginning of this podcast, one of the our students who did a short film, it was a collaboration within our program, and so people were kind of getting that feel. But then you have on the other end the games one, where you're now not just teaching animation, you're now also teaching workflows that are specific for this field within animation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the most crucial thing I would say that you could start to teach an animator who wants to get into games is what Rick said before, is think about it like not only is animation is one piece of the pie that you're going to have to learn. Think about like I say, flow charts, logic charts, like where is this one move going to go? And is it going to branch to 3 things? Is it going to branch to 1 thing? Is it going to branch to 10 things? And if it does, how does it branch? Where does it branch? What do I need an animation there where it branches, or am I going to let the game engine interpolate it or blend it? So if you can teach them that way of thinking, then that's probably one of the most beneficial lessons I think that they could learn.
One of the projects you just recently finished up here, and it looks like a big one here, obviously, Far Cry.
It was a beast of a project. It was a big one.
It looks like it got really good ratings off of. I checked out IGN.com, and they gave it some really solid ratings. So it looks like that paid off.
Yeah, it's we're pretty proud of it. Honestly, I would say it's one of the highlights of my career for sure. It's I find as a commercial artist, inevitably this is another thing. I've done a couple talks for some schools back in my home province, whatever, and what I always try to tell a lot of the artists also is that, listen, I know you're getting into this because you love whatever. You either love animation or you love games or you love movies. And that's great because that passion is going to fuel you for the next 25, 30 years, if you're lucky. But the one thing you have to remember as a commercial artist is that you're going to work on projects that are maybe not the most inspirational to you, or that are just kind of ones that are a paycheck. So when a project like Far Cry 3 came up, and we're seeing kind of like the fruits of our labor now, it's great as a commercial artist to work on a project and have it come out, and it's a project that you actually love yourself. Like it's actually in my PS3 right now, and I was playing it last night. So it's actually a game. A lot of times, you work on a project and you're so drenched in it that you kind of, when it comes out, you're kind of like, oh, I don't even know if I want to play that. It's like I know it inside out. But Far Cry was one that I was eagerly awaiting my copy, and I couldn't wait to play it. So it was interesting. Like Far Cry was an interesting project for myself because I actually joined the project as a lead narrative animator. So that was even kind of a new title at the time. Yeah. And basically what they wanted was, they were looking at pretty much making the whole game interactive. So even story moments, so you would never have traditional cinematics. They were potentially thinking about having interactive story elements. So my first mandate was to kind of figure out a system for interactive of narrative. But as a lot of people would probably tell you, just that system alone is insane. There's game like Heavy Rain is a game built just on that. You know what I mean? So they decided later on that it was like, okay, well, look, we're a shooter first. Let's focus shooting and all that stuff. But then I kind of made the transition into animation director. So I guess, I don't know. I mean, the thing we wanted, I found a first-person shooter was interesting to me because I had never done a first-person shooter before. I had worked on Halo 3, but only cinematics as a cinematics animator. So first-person was kind of new to me. And then becoming kind of like an animation director and inheriting kind of already a year and a bit's worth of development, it was kind of an interesting thing to step into. But I found like one of the things we really tried to focus on was a lot of like third person action games, you focus on the hero character a lot. And, he or she is kind of the backbone, and then you kind of build the world out around it. Whereas with the first person shooter, your hands are in the screen and your guns are obviously a big character, and they have to be great and visceral, and they're a character unto their own. But really a big focus is the combatants and the NPCs, because you're really telling a lot of the story through the people you're actually shooting at. So we did a lot of work into cover systems and flinch systems and like flanking, and trying to really give a natural kind of life to the people you're engaging with. So I mean, you'll notice that if gunshots are going around, guys, they're not just they're not just popping up out of cover and shooting at you.
Yeah.
They're actually reacting to bullet fire, and some of them maybe get scared and backpedal and they stumble. So we did a lot of work with like kind of adding variety into the movement system to make them feel like they're reacting to the stimuli around them. So that was a big challenge.
Is that a difficult balance to make it feel realistic, but yet not going too far where it kind of stops the gameplay because people are just covering the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, it is. It kind of grow. This is where you kind of, like Rick had mentioned before, you kind of have to go into other disciplines and kind of understand as well, because say we have an animation system that does all of this. So, if a gunshot goes off, a guy will react to it, or if a bullet goes by his head, he'll flinch and maybe duck. At the same time, you can't have everybody doing that.
Right.
So then on top of that, you need some type of AI management system that says, okay, well, when this guy is flinching and ducking for cover, whatever, this guy is going to be engaging me and shooting me, because if I just shoot a gun and everybody runs for cover or ducks, it's going to be a pretty lame game. So you kind of have to, it's only as good as all of those animations and all those systems are only as good as how they're managed to the player. So yeah, it gets pretty complicated. Yeah. Again, it's iteration. You play it, you test stuff. But that was pretty interesting. Another big thing we really pushed was I then transitioned to kind of a cinematic director. So then it was very working performance capture and stuff like that.
We've talked about on the podcast the use of motion capture and stuff like that, but you're now talking about performance capture. How does that work within your pipeline?
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting because pipeline was the main reason we kind of chose to go with the system that we did, because when we started to look into it, like at Ubisoft, they have this great system called Mocap or whatever, and it's similar to kind of what James Cameron used on Avatar, where you have a camera in front of your face and it captures facial, but the performance capture captures facial, voice, and body capture all in one sitting. So basically, I was looking at the software that they use to capture the face, and it's very animator friendly. So when I saw this kind of tech, I thought, wow, okay, this looks. I don't know how to describe this, but I'm a very I won't say greedy, but I'm very protective animator wise. Like I want animators to be able to spend as much time, creating stuff. So I
Right.
don't want the tools to get in the way of the animators as much as possible.
Right.
So this technology they had looked really animator friendly. So we decided to I sat with one of the writers and asked him to kind of do up a bit of a monologue, and we were going to test it with an actor. So we got an actor in to do the monologue, and it turned out to be the insanity monologue that is in our game as kind of like one of the marquee things. And the thing that kind of spawned the choice of performance capture was really a pipeline issue. I wanted to make sure that it was the most animator friendly and the most easy to get into the game in the end, in a way, from an animation standpoint. But really what it is it's kind of like our shoots are done almost like a film shoot, in the way that you have actors in, we get them in, we do a bit of a rehearsal, we get them in the mocap volume, and we shoot it really almost like a film. So we have the actors acting off of each other, and then we get that data back. We get the facial stuff, which is a video, and they take it into the system. And basically, what it is the system for the facial is kind of like a smart in-betweener, I call it. So you use it like facial reference, like any reference I would if I was animating.
Uh-huh.
And basically, you set a key pose. Let's say you're doing the mouth. You set a key pose if he's doing let's say an E.
Mm-hmm.
You set that, and you say, okay, this is what the mouth looks like on my 3D character when it's this point in the video. And the software goes through and tries to find all of those moments where the mouth is close to that shape, and it kind of fills in that shape for you, which is kind of a nice workflow. And once you do that, it gets you about 80% there, and then you take it into your 3D software and you do your polish pass. So it's really kind of like you kind of have a digital in-betweener in a way.
Kind of going back to a little bit of the 2D days when you did your main poses and you had an in-betweener, huh?
Yeah, that's it. I don't know. I kind of got off tangent there, but
No, it's interesting. Very interesting.
I think it's awesome because it also kind of gives you an idea of what a game animator can do, and how much he can do. He could work in game, he could work with motion capture, and then he could do cinematics and do keyframing. Like, was everything motion capture, or did you also have a lot of keyframing with Far Cry 3?
we did a lot of motion capture. We even did we did predominantly mostly motion capture for our NPCs as well in the game, but we did keyframing over top of it. So you'd get the data, but then there was a keyframe component that goes over the top of it to make it work in the game.
Do you find that an animator that know how to keyframe well does better with motion capture, or you find he gets distracted with it?
No, I think they do. I think a strong keyframer is good with mocap. I find I found doing my own tests with mocap. If you're a strong keyframer already, you're going to be able to pick out the things that you like automatically, and the poses that you're going to be able to pick out the key poses that you think are working, be able to push them further, while still maintaining some of that. Like, it's funny, mocap can be used in so many different ways. I know some people who use mocap pretty much straight, cleaned, whatever, and put it in. I tend to like to use it as my starting point for motion. If I'm going to use mocap, I start there, but then I say, okay, where can I push this beyond what it is? Because the one thing that mocap does give you is, as an animation director, there's two things that I find it gives me. It gives me a baseline across the board of, I won't say quality, but of consistency. So if I have a team of animators and I have, let's say, two really senior guys, and maybe three intermediates, and I have two or three juniors, really junior animators, mocap is a bit of the leveling field for that as a consistency thing, because some of the junior guys may not edit the mocap as much as the senior guys, but you'll still have a baseline. So it's kind of it's a great way to get a consistency across the project. The other thing it offers for more senior experienced people is you get obviously mocap's great for getting a lot of somewhat little subtleties, right? But it can come off stiff sometimes. So if you have a great animator, they can push the things that need to be pushed. And what comes along with that is that you get all these subtleties and kind of intricacies that mocap gives you. So in the hands of a really good keyframer, mocap can look really, really, really good.
Okay, question for you, personal. What are some of your favorite titles that you've played? I mean, you can go way back or present.
I'll go. My one of my all-time favorites, hands down, is Prince of Persia: Sands of Time.
Ooh, yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. Now I call it like my now look, I may be doing like nostalgia look back and thinking of it being rosier than it was, but I still played it in a long time. But I consider it to be, as a game example, one of the great examples of good controls with a good sense of weight and grounded character that feels like it's in its environment. It didn't have snappy controls, but it had a really nice rhythm. And if you would spend 15, 20 minutes moving the character around, you'd get into the prince's rhythm. And then it was one of the best control games ever. Like, it really was a nice balance between weight and momentum and responsiveness and kind of like excitement. Really, I love it as a game.
Yeah.
Another, obviously, I'm a huge fan of the Uncharted series, but not necessarily like, I think as a whole, as an experience, right? Like, their storytelling is amazing. The cinematics are good, and then the gameplay is good as well. So like, as a whole package, I really quite like it. But I mean, I got into games because I wanted to play the action heroes that I saw growing up in movies and television. So, Nathan Drake to me is like me playing a young indie. I mean, so it's like, oh my God, yeah. Other ones, obviously Left 4 Dead is a game that I just cannot, when I start playing that, put it down, because I think as a concept for a game, it's amazing. It's probably one of the best co-op games, probably one of the best applications of co-op gameplay ever done, in my opinion. And it's zombies, so who doesn't like to shoot zombies? Jak and Daxter, back in the day, again, amazing animation and amazing control and just beautiful art. Yeah, it's gorgeous. So those are some of my favorites, I guess.
Yeah, you got to like the games that have the great art form with it too, not just the play value.
Well, one thing I find, and this is a personal opinion, the one thing that does kind of frustrate me a little bit is like the big developers seem to be going towards, and I think it's because consoles can push bigger graphics and whatever, but they seem to be going down the realism realm with a lot of big titles. And I kind of pine for the days of the Jak and Daxters and of these stylized games, because I think we're in a medium that you can do so much. You can explore really crazy worlds. I don't know why the need for realism and these muted worlds with, like, drab textures and unsaturated colors. I don't know. I mean, I think we're missing out. I hope we'll have a rebirth of kind of, I'm not saying a rebirth of platforms or anything, but a rebirth of
the fantasy part of it.
That's it. I mean, it's like, even film is hit or miss with photorealism, especially humans, for sure. And I don't think can go there, and yet it's just the technology's not there, because no matter how good a model or a character looks on a still, they might be close to photoreal in their still, but as soon as it starts to move on, even if it moves really well, if it's not perfect, you're in the uncanny valley.
Yeah.
Right? So what I always like is, give me even a subtly stylized character, like push the proportions slightly, it doesn't have to be much, but it can be almost just a feeling. And then when it moves almost real, it's going to be that much more appealing. Stylize it that much to kind of start getting yourself out of that uncanny valley. You just have to, like I always say, I always use the old man as an example. Like, if you look at a lot of older people, they tend to be caricatures of their younger self. Do you know what I mean?
That's cool.
as we get older, like our muscle definition kind of fades and our noses start to look bigger. And so prominent features get even more prominent. So I use the old man scale on some of these characters and kind of like pick a feature, a defining feature, and try to push it a little bit beyond what would be considered real. And, and I kind of say, like, I promise you, if that character moves close to real, then it's going to feel 10 times more credible than like the standard photoreal person mocapped.
Yeah.
So I hope they do that. I'm doing my part to try to push it that way. But
Right
on. Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think about sequels, games? In the game industry, we have a lot of sequels. Uncharted 1, 2, 3, Devil May Cry 1, 2, 3. What's your opinion about this?
I don't dislike it. I quite like sequels. It depends on how you do them. If you like a franchise or if you like a game, you tend to want more of it, right? It's just how you do it. Like I'm a huge fan of getting into a world or an IP. So let's say I'm going to try to give an example here or whatever, but let's say I played Far Cry, okay? And our Far Cry is Jason Brody. Well, if they wanted to go into Far Cry world again, I would love it. I love crisscrossing storylines. So I'd like to see more games when they do a sequel to say, I think Crysis did this. You played as one guy, and then on one of the sequels, you played as the guy that was on the other side of the island in the same invasion, but you see it from his point of view. Now, some people argue that that's maybe a cop-out, but I tend to like it because I kind of like I'm a comic book kid in a way, and I used to love when DC or Marvel would do the crossovers. You'd see like the story from these guys, and then they would intertwine with other guys. So no, I think sequels pose a real opportunity to expand a game's universe or expand an IP. Why wouldn't you want to spend more time with this character?
Yeah, I love sequels. Personally, I love sequels. I love when I find a game that I can really follow. I just want more of it, and I hate when it ends because I'm like, I have to wait another like 3 years before I can get another one, and it drives me nuts. But I think sequels is you get invested into your characters, and I agree. Like, why not continue building, and growing with your characters, or I just love sequels. I just wanted to get your point of view.
No, I do. I think like if you think of it in the idea of like an episodic type thing, like imagine like whatever Uncharted, the first one is the first story of Nathan Drake, but then like tune in next week, folks, and then I think there has been a history in our industry of over milking a franchise sometimes, but I think if it's managed right, no, I mean sequels are great. It's just I don't want to see like you just took all the exact same mechanics and colored everything red instead of blue. Well, hold on, I'm paying $60 for this, and like no, I mean if you have another story or another thing you want to do with that character, then yeah, do it. Game wise, I think everybody who plays games probably has this feeling like when you pick up a new game, you have to learn it, right? Like games take a longer time to get into, I find, than a movie. Like for myself, when I sit down to watch a movie, I'm always very excited for the opening scene because the opening scene sets the tone for me as a viewer. If they nail the opening scene or the opening sequence, then I'm hooked. I'm like, okay, but that could take 30 seconds, 2 minutes. A game, it's not like that, I find, because you're spending the first bit feeling the character. How does he move? Okay, what does he do? And although some of the control schemes are similar, it's always a little bit different. So it takes a while, and once you like that character, there's a sense of comfort when a sequel comes out because you're like, yeah, okay, you're getting into this old pair of shoes again.
Yeah. Well, Darryl, we've taken plenty of your time here, and really looking forward to seeing what you can provide here at iAnimate as an instructor. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and again, just looking at your experience, I think it's going to really just continue to grow iAnimate.
Yeah, cool. I'm super excited to join the team.
It's been fun, honestly, to all our followers who are listening. I'm excited. I can't wait for Darryl to start. And we have so many great programs, our feature, our games, and our rigging. I mean, and our instructors our instructors make the program great. And it's really our students who commit and put the time and effort into it that really reflects that. So, this is awesome. Thank you, Darryl, for coming, and thank you for everyone who makes iAnimate who we are. So
Absolutely. All right. Well, here's to 2013, Darryl, when you join us as an instructor.
Great. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you very much.